also has written several publications in accredited peer-reviewed journals and conferences. So before we start, just a brief housekeeping. I would like to request all the attendees who have joined this webinar to please keep your mics, your microphones on mute while our distinguished speaker does his presentation. After the presentation, there will be a Q&A session, which will be guided by my co-host, Mr. Barth. Without further ado, Dr. Samuel Adenkundle, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kudzani, for the wonderful welcome. And on that note, let me say good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're joining in from this evening. I'm very, very delighted to be in our midst this evening as we are here laying the foundation for the future. As Ms. Kudzani has said, I am Samuel Adekunle, right? And then I'll be presenting this evening on building information modeling. And what we are going to be looking at is very, very simple, which I believe at the end of this webinar, you will be able to tell where you stand and the opportunity that you have in this very, very important emerging technology in the built environment. So we'll be looking at building information modeling, if it is a fleeting trend or a fundamental transformation. Before I continue, Ms. Kudzani, please confirm, and all attendees, can you hear me? And can you see my screen?
Yes, Dr. Samuel, we can hear you loud and clear.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Loud and clear, your screen is showing.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So for this evening, we will quickly just go through some few things as it regards building information modeling, for short BIM. So throughout my presentation, please, I will be shuffling between both, but I will definitely use more of BIM as the acronym for building information modeling. So we are going to look at a general introduction to it all to set the tone, and then what BIM is, what it is not in terms of the misconceptions about BIM, and then the benefits and challenges, the terminologies, some terminologies as it stands in BIM, then the opportunities for you, which I think is very, very critical, and then the conclusion, and then we can take the Q&A, as she has rightly said. Please note that most of the things we'll be discussing this evening, ladies and gentlemen, will be majorly tailored to the young professionals, in the sense that the opportunities that you have in this very important technology that is shaping the construction industry at the moment. Ms. Kudzani has done, I would say, a good job in introducing me, so I wouldn't go through a whole lot of my introduction or who I am again, but basically this is about me without trying to come up with most of the accolades as she has read out. So this evening, let us start this way. Ladies and gentlemen, let me take your mind back to some years before now. By some years, I wouldn't mean 5 years or 10. You might be surprised that some years will actually mean that some of us were not even given birth to at that point in time. But for some of us, we've been able to read about this and we know about it. So let me take our minds back to the very ever first high-rise building, popularly known as the Tower of Babel, right? And then that is the first attempt, or that was the first attempt by humans to say, we want to build something that is very, very tall, that will touch the skies. Most of us have heard this story. Some of us don't believe in it. Some of us do. But the major take-home for us this evening about this building is this. The good thing about our conversation and the audience this evening is that most of us are believed to be practicing in the construction industry. With that being said, it means that most of us have been involved in diverse type of projects before now, right? So now imagine people coming together to build a high-rise building as at that time when we don't have all of these emerging technologies that we have this day. Definitely, no matter the scale of projects, most of the time you are going to have many processes, many stakeholders, conflict, both direct and indirect, clashes here and there, busy period, accidents, and the rest. So have you ever asked yourself, how did they manage to get to that point, even though it's never got completed, right? But to that point where it was stopped, how did they manage to get it to that point? How many information processes went into it? As you're thinking about that and you're trying to analyze that, let me bring you to a more recent time that most of us can easily relate to. And that is this building right here. I know most of us can easily relate with this, right? Yeah, this is a modern building. Most of us know when it was constructed. And the good thing is most of us have actually read and watched videos about the construction, the technology, the innovations, the new concept that was brought into play. Now in your mind, put both buildings side by side. I'm not going to go into motivational talks about, oh, do what you can do, irrespective of where you are, the time and season, etc. But just imagine the construction process for both, the type of information management, the challenges they must have faced, and the rest. Why am I taking us back to these two times that are very, very important in history? It is for us to also be able to think about the different revolutions and trends or evolution that we have actually experienced in the construction industry. What has come into play, how the buildings have changed, how the construction processes have changed over time, what has changed, how these changes have actually aided or helped our industry to change and to grow. How these changes have brought about new ways of doing things and new demands from the clients. And that in itself also places new responsibilities on us as construction professionals, and maybe more on us as the young professionals. Now, without going fully into what we are talking about this evening, one thing you're going to actually look at or observe is this, that what we are talking about this evening is somewhere here, 20th century. And from there, although before that we have the computers, right? And from there we have different emerging technologies coming in. And I can tell you that for all of this emerging technology, BIM plays a critical role and can integrate with all of them. Like I said, I'm not going into BIM yet, right? But that in a way tells us how important it is. Okay, so looking at an industry that has gone through all of these revolutions, witnessed a whole lot of man-made attempts, it shows us that the industry is a very, very important one, irrespective of any country that you are going to talk about. Be it a developed or a developing country, the construction industry is very, very important. Okay, from infrastructures, be it buildings, or be it infrastructure projects like roads, bridges, whatever it is, you will always find the construction industry in the midst of it all. And with that also, we have different challenges that are plaguing the industry, from safety concerns to abandoned projects. I know some of us, we do know where this is, right? For those of us who are majorly from South Africa, you should know where this particular bridge or should I say uncompleted bridge is. So we have so many challenges facing the construction industry, and this includes also project cost overrun, a whole lot of bottlenecks, okay, payment difficulties, effective communication is lacking, collaboration is lacking, a whole lot. And all of these challenges, ladies and gentlemen, has its own cost implication. But the good news is technology, moving from the old form of doing things, has been proven over time to be the solution to majorly all of these challenges. Although the adoption of technology, the diffusion of it is another challenge that the construction industry is actually grappling with. And one of the major game changers has been COVID, okay? But it is not just, even though it has been a game changer, it has not changed it completely. So diffusion has been a major challenge, even though we know the benefits of all of these technologies in the construction industry. So with all of these challenges that I've mentioned, information management, cost management, scheduling, lack of collaboration, time performance, a whole lot of us know about the reworks problems that we have in the construction industry. COVID, like I mentioned, became the game changer, changing that tag that we had on the construction industry of being a late adopter of technology. Because we all remember with COVID, with the measures put in place, we needed to work from home. There is more reliance on technology. And with that, we had the prevalence and popularity of many emerging technologies in the construction industry, from prefabrication, modular construction techniques and concepts, lean construction, autonomous construction, AR and VR, 3D printing or additive manufacturing, which some of us will have seen it at play rather, in one of the 3D printed houses in Johannesburg, which is situated at the University of Johannesburg. All right. Then you have wireless monitoring, UAVs, cloud and real-time collaboration, among others. But like I said, our major focus this evening is building information modeling, which is very central to all of these technologies that are coming up because of the information management aspect and the collaboration that it actually offers. So having said all of this, then what is BIM? That is one of these emerging technologies that is changing the face and how we do things in the construction industry, changing how the process, the product, and the people conduct themselves in the construction industry. Before we go to defining what BIM is, ladies and gentlemen, for most of us, if we remember how there have been an evolution, even for how we store information before now, the diskettes, the disk, the flash drives. But now, most of us actually use the cloud services and not all of this anymore. Similarly, in the construction industry, information management has actually changed over time. From the use of papers, drawing on papers, among others, now we have grown to CAD at a point. Then we have 2D and 3D modeling. Now we are talking about 4D and 5D, 6D, and other Ds, which we are going to come to later. But the point is, we have moved more or less from how we do things in terms of information modeling and information management from paper-based to looking at things beyond the single line, one-dimensional or two-dimensional things to three-dimensional or even more dimensions of objects in the construction industry. And with each dimension we add to it, it becomes richer and more robust for us to work with in the construction industry. So for BIM in its evolution, it didn't start this year, it didn't start last year. It has started since the 1970s when Eastman started with the BDS, which is the Building Description System. Time to talk about how building components are to be described. Okay, and then in 1977, we talk about the graphical language for interactive design, etc. This man has been referred to majorly as the grandfather of BIM. But in 2000, that is when, or early 2000s, that is when BIM, as it is now known, actually became in its full sense. So having known or talked about where we started from and how it has evolved over the years to what it is at the moment, now we can talk about what BIM is in its essence. We try to define it. Different definitions definitely has been offered. And why these definitions that you have on your screen were chosen is one. If you look at the first one, it is from the ISO 19650, which is the world or globally acclaimed and accepted information management standard that is used for BIM. And if you look at the definition as put forward by ISO 19650, it states that BIM is a use of a shared digital representation of a built asset. Now, with the word built asset, you find out that it is not just limiting it to buildings. It talks about bridges, roads, process plants, among others. And what does this do when you have a shared digital representation of it? It is to the intent that you facilitate design, construction, and operation processes to form a reliable basis for decisions. So if you look at this, what do I want you to actually take note of in this definition? One of it is reliable basis for you to make decisions. Secondly, the shared aspect of it. Okay. Thirdly, would be talking about the different phases of the construction process or the life cycle of a project that is being taken care of. Similarly, if you look at other definitions, they also have different aspects that has been highlighted. So if you look at the one by Beauty Smart Alliance, it says that it's a digital representation of physical and functional characteristics. Now you see, it's not just you representing the physical entity or asset, but also the functional aspect of it, which is really, really key. And we're going to get to that as we move along in this webinar this evening. Remember, we've identified the shared aspect, which is also here. As such, serves as a shared knowledge resources for information about a facility. So every stakeholder on the project have access to it. Collaboratively, they can work. And with what they have, they share information real time on it. Okay, so it means that it is beyond just your ordinary 3D model. It is a smart 3D model, an intelligent 3D model, which allows for other models to, other dimensions rather, to be added to it to make it very, very effective for what it's being used for. Okay, so now take note of the shared part of it, reliability in terms of decision making, representing both the physical rather and the functional aspect of a facility or an asset, right? The other part will be, it brings together technology, process improvement, and digital information to radically improve client and project outcomes and asset operations. These are before now challenges in the construction industry, and BIM is providing a solution to them or to it in terms of project outcomes, client satisfaction. So it means that from the last one, it means that you're not just looking at the technology, you are also looking at the process in the construction industry that is being impacted. And with that, it means also that you have the product in the construction industry that is being impacted by the adoption of BIM to make it better and more efficient. So if you look at it generally, in its broadest sense, you know that your BIM is actually offering you a collaborative platform rather for all of the construction stakeholder on a project. Then aside from you having something physical, like we pointed out earlier on, you have a virtual representation. Then the functional characteristics of that building is also modeled. And with that, you are able to actually talk about the building performance and then you make decisions throughout the building life cycle from the planning stage up to the handover or the operation and maintenance, among others. So in this broader sense, you are having BIM to include all software applications that generate, manipulate, store, and deliver building information rather than restricting it to the narrow set of modeling authoring platforms. And then with that also, for your BIM, it is not just about the technology, ladies and gentlemen. You have the process, you also have the people to make it matured in its adoption. So ladies and gentlemen, if you look at BIM in its broader sense, it serves to serve the building lifecycle right from the design and engineering to the construction to the operations stage of it. So throughout the building lifecycle, your BIM is at play, and it is very, very important. So for you to actually have a collaborative platform or a collaborative process that's effective and productive, easily making clashes to be well resolved, you need your building information modeling. And at this point, which we are going to see later also, you have different aspects coming into play. So it is very, very difficult for you to say as a professional, no, BIM is not for me, or I don't need the BIM. Because every information by every professional is actually embedded for a more seamless, efficient, and productive process and building process in the construction industry. Now, let's quickly look at some of the misconceptions about BIM. Generally, you see people talk about BIM, and then they make you wonder if BIM is just about technology. Ladies and gentlemen, it is beyond just the technology. For you to actually have BIM being really adopted and it being matured, you need the process aspect of it and the people aspect of it. So it is beyond just the software. Okay, and then secondly, ladies and gentlemen, it is beyond the 3D model, like we said earlier on, so I won't spend time on that. And thirdly, it is beyond a software brand. So take, for example, someone saying, oh, Autodesk is BIM. No, it is not. If you look at the BIM software ecosystem, we have more than 1,000 software or software manufacturers playing in that space. So it is not about one technology company or a software manufacturer. It is a whole ecosystem talking about many players in it. And one thing is this, which has always been a challenge, but with IFC and Kobe, you find out that it is no longer a challenge, which is interoperability, to say, oh, Mr. A is using a software from this manufacturer, Mr. B is using a software from another manufacturer, and they are both on the same project. So what happens? How can they actually work seamlessly without losing information when they send it to each other? Hence, we have platforms to easily integrate all of them. Lastly, ladies and gentlemen, BIM cannot be adopted in its real sense by going solo. Although in many countries around the world, ladies and gentlemen, it has always been observed that the designers, take for example, architects, are always first to adopt most of the softwares that are BIM compliant. However, that doesn't mean that it is BIM in itself. They have only adopted the software for design or designing, okay? But not BIM in itself, because BIM in itself, we have to need all other professionals to come to the table and work collaboratively. All right. So now, looking at all of this, now I know what BIM is. I know what BIM is not. How do I ask myself or assess myself or my company or my country, meaning at the individual level, at the corporate level, or at the industry level? How do I assess it to say if I am actually adopting BIM or not? How do I really say if this is the level of BIM that I am adopting, or that my country or my country construction industry has adopted. This is very simple. Let's look at a quick one, or a quick way for us to say this is what or where we are in terms of BIM adoption. This is the UK BIM wage, and I'm going to add one to it now. This is stopping at level 3, right? At level 0, in terms of maturity, that is when people are still reliant on paper. I won't ask you right now if you're still using paper in terms of authoring most of your tasks. If not for you, when you get to project level, at the project level, are other professionals actually with you when it comes to adopting soft copies, or it is still paper? So at level 0, you are having CAD and still people still actually using paper. At level 1, here you are having a file-based system, your CDE is in place. And what is CDE? Your CDE is the common data environment. Okay, and common data environment, that in itself, I would say, is another lecture on its own. If I go into it, we won't actually finish what we are meant to cover this year, this evening, which is just having to lay the foundation really. Now, for your CDE, which is common data environment, in that bucket that you have information being managed, being exchanged, being authored, etc. by professionals or stakeholders, right? So at level 1, you have your CDE, you're having different rules being defined among the construction industry professionals or stakeholders on that project. So you're having authoring being with 2D and 3 dimensions, right? Then at level 2, then you're having a form of collaboration. There's proper library management, your CDE is there, your different form of your AIM, asset information management, your PIM, etc. are there. All right. And then with this, you've started using your ISO 19650, which is the basis for your well outlined CDE. Then at level 3, here you have the integration with AI, I mean BIM with AI now, BIM, digital twin, etc. Because at this point, you are having the interoperable data. Okay, and then you are talking about the lifecycle management of projects, etc. But heavily here from the level 3 upwards or onwards, you are having a very, very big reliance on data transfer and data management. And you have a very seamless interoperable process within softwares, project stakeholders, among others. So it means they can transfer project information from point A to point B without losing any data, irrespective of the software they are making use of. Now, beyond level 3, ladies and gentlemen, what you have is level 4. And in that level 4, you are now talking about BIM and its integration with metaverse, which is a whole new level to it all. So the integration of BIM with metaverse gives you your level 4. All right. And with that, you're having new business models coming up. It's an advanced BIM maturity with comprehensive digital twins and predictive design in the metaverse. That might be something you want to really explore. Now, in all of this, ladies and gentlemen, like I said earlier on, I want to ask you right now, where do you think your country or your construction industry is at the moment? Do you think your construction industry is actually at level 0, or between level 0 and level 1, or level 1? Do you think you are there yet to say, yes, we are really adopting BIM, or we are still adopting just 2D and 3D? And some people are saying it is BIM, when it's actually just 2D and 3D without real essence of BIM coming into play. Now, looking at all of these benefits, looking at how we can assess the construction industry in our various locations in terms of adoption of BIM, why haven't we achieved the optimal maturity or the highest maturity in terms of BIM adoption. What are these barriers that is really putting, that has actually stopped us or challenging every stakeholder in the construction industry from achieving optimal maturity or working together? Ladies and gentlemen, we have 1,001 challenges. But like I said, I want to be careful in tailoring what you're going to discuss to the context. And by that, I mean that for you as a young professional, what really affects you as an individual, as a professional? So I'll just look at three things: the lack of skills, the lack of BIM knowledge, and the resistance to change rather. Many professionals, even the young ones, do not want to leave the status quo. They want to be fixated on how things have been done before now and don't want to adopt new ways of doing things. And for these people, you ask them, can you please go back to using landlines instead of your mobile phone? But they will tell you no. They want to use their mobile phones, but they don't adopt new technologies, even that will aid their work. The other thing, which are two critical things, is the lack of skills and the lack of BIM knowledge. It means that even when we are presented with these things, ladies and gentlemen, most of us do not have the necessary or the prerequisite knowledge, the prerequisite skills to adopt it or to function. It does mean that most of us actually require a whole lot of reskilling in terms of being functional or very important to the scheme of things at this moment. Now, these parts, I will not really go through it one after the other because I want to believe we should have been able to pick up, or we'll have actually touched on almost everything here while talking about BIM from the beginning. Okay, so to save time, I won't touch on them. So quickly, let us look at something very important. All right, and that is terminologies used in BIM. Again, this is not exhaustive because each one of them, ladies and gentlemen, especially for this slide is very interconnected. And like I said earlier on, if I'm going to talk about the CDE, which is a very critical aspect of your BIM, it is not allowed within the time allotted for this workshop, I will call it. Okay, so I'll just say your common data environment, which is a critical aspect of you defining what your BIM is and seamlessly adopting it on even any project, is important. And three things are important in that area. One, the level of information that is needed for each of the phases or processes that you are actually going through in the project. Who is going to do what? That's also important. The purpose and the use case of that information. Those are three critical aspects of it that are important if you are going to actually do this, which is your common data environment for it, because it's like your foundation. It is your foundation for your BIM execution, because under that, so many things are also connected to it. You can see me listing a whole lot of things on this slide, which, like I said, if I'm going to go into them, no, we don't have enough time this evening. Now, these other aspects is the dimensions, which I have mentioned earlier on, your 3D, your 4D, your 5D, and the Ds are always being added. They are being continuously researched and added. Hence, I said it is beyond your 3D model. You're having 4D, that's the fourth dimension, okay? And then you're having the 5D, the 6D, the 7D. The 6D is talking about the environmental information. The 7D is talking about the facility management information. 5D cost for those who are quantity surveyors. Then you're having the 4D, okay, which talks about the scheduling of your project. So you can see we have a lot of dimensions being added or present rather in your BIM. And all of these are critical to the execution. Hence, you can see that it is not just a matter of I have a software or I have a 3D model. What are the other dimensions or information added to that model to make it a complete BIM? And you can see other professionals are required to actually make it one. So let's quickly look into the future, because as they say, the youths are the future, right? Hence, we are going to look at the future quickly and look at the different dimensions of BIM or aspects of BIM that are being adopted and that are very, very critical as we move along in the BIM journey. One is the 4D BIM, which is used to create construction schedules. You can actually simulate construction process in it. You can track progress. Even right from your office, you can easily see where you are and the rest. But one thing I will say is this, ladies and gentlemen, there are other technologies that are always integrated to the BIM platform to make this happen. Okay, now I'm checking my time. That apologies. Now 6D BIM. Now for your 6D BIM, it's about your sustainability BIM or life cycle BIM, and that basically talks about sustainable BIM. Okay, and what you talk about is now the energy consumption, the carbon footprint, the water usage, the environmental impact of that building. So you do a whole lot of data analysis to get this done. One thing we should know is this: aside from the challenges that I mentioned earlier on, the building construction or the construction industry rather is known to heavily have an impact on the climate or on the earth. All right. So there is no way I can talk about climate change and the rest without you talking about the construction industry. It does mean that we need to reduce the impact of the construction industry on the earth. So with CSD BIM, you can easily do analysis and make better and informed decisions as it relates to sustainability. Also, you can determine how the indoor quality and the user's comfort come into play with your six dimension of BIM. The other part of BIM, which is less looked at, is your scan to BIM. Because in our mind, ladies and gentlemen, someone is already asking, all of what you have been talking about since morning is like BIM is only important to new buildings. So what happens to existing buildings? Right? So with that, you have scan to BIM, which helps you to integrate existing structures into the building information model environment. And to do this, you have to scan existing structures and bring it into the building information modeling environment, right? Now, one thing that's very, very important that I must say here is this. For your scan to BIM, aside from it being useful for maintenance and the rest, it is also being used to preserve historic sites and heritage buildings. So all these historic sites that we have or heritage buildings that we have that have been constructed before the advent of BIM are easily being made BIM compliant, and that also helps to manage them appropriately. Before I leave this point, ladies and gentlemen, let me give you something to just ponder on or research more about. Damage information model. We've been talking about building information modeling. What about damage information model? So, just take note of it. You can research more about it as we go along. So let's quickly look at something very important again, and that is your city information model. So you can see how BIM is very, very important, not beyond just one edifice. It has a far-reaching impact, usage, and implication. For your city information modeling, it has to do with urban design and urban management. So an entire city can actually be modeled and monitored live. Take, for example, for those in, say, in South Africa, let's say we are modeling Johannesburg as a whole, and we have a virtual representation of it, and we see everything that is happening real time in that model. And for us to have that, we need 3D models of buildings and all infrastructures. We need geographic information modeling. We need the information modeling from BIM data. Sensors will also be there, real-time data feeds to achieve this. So imagine maybe you connecting from maybe Lagos in Nigeria. You have a whole, let's say, Lagos state modeled in the cloud. Any city, any country can be modeled and monitored real time. And this can be used to monitor the city in terms of safety, in terms of traffic, in terms of even if you have unrest, easily you can monitor the city in real time and control these things. I know someone is asking probably, is this possible to have a whole city being modeled? Has it been done before? We are used to building information modeling. We have not even conquered it to the optimal maturity level. We are talking about city information modeling. And for us to even get or achieve the CIM, we need the BIM. And the answer is yes. So when I want to look at some of these applications in Tallinn City, you have Helsinki 3D, where it has been used. And lastly, you can also look at the virtual Singapore, where city information modeling has been used extensively to really capture a whole city. So you can see it is beyond BIM, and it calls for a lot of stakeholders at every point in time to get this achieved. All right, so let's look at opportunities for you in all of this that has been mentioned. Ladies and gentlemen, don't be discouraged and don't let anyone tell you BIM is no more relevant. According to the projections, ladies and gentlemen, by 2027, this is 2024, 3 years from now, the BIM market globally is projected to be $11.96 billion. It means it is a growing market. And if you look around you, everywhere you turn to, many governments are actually mandating the use of BIM. Stakeholders are fighting and making efforts to actually ensure that BIM is being adopted. There's growing awareness and benefits of BIM everywhere in the world. And like we mentioned when we started, there is an increase in the construction of very complex projects, which requires a deeper level of information management than the sustainability part of it, which you have mentioned with our 6D BIM. So it means that BIM is ever growing, and it is very, very critical and important to where the construction industry is going. And if you look at some of the aspects we have touched on, you can see how critical BIM is. So now that we have all of these projections, ladies and gentlemen, the question we should be asking ourselves is, where do I fit? Where do you fit? You as a young professional rather, at this point, where I have mentioned about BIM being integrated with many emerging technologies, be it artificial intelligence and machine learning, BIM is being integrated with it, okay, for predictive analytics and the rest, be it IoT, Internet of Things, for real-time data from construction sites, real-time monitoring and the rest, you have been being integrated with that also. Then your VR and your AR, if you remember the slide I showed you in the beginning, where you're having so many emerging technologies working together. And I said BIM is actually central to most of them being adopted in the construction industry. So it is being integrated. You have the blockchain technology, which we have been told, or we have been, what's the word now, trained about on this platform. The blockchain technology is also there, which BIM is also being integrated with for seamless payment systems, smart contract, and the rest. Then your 6D BIM for sustainability and lifecycle management, the digital twin is there. You're having a whole lot of global standards coming up. By the way, there's a need for contextual BIM standards. So you might want to ask yourself, do we have a fully matured standard even for the South African space, or for the Nigerian space, or for the New Zealand space, wherever you're joining in from? Okay. Then for sustainable design, you're having everyone moving towards smart cities. You have the need for skill and reskilling, like I mentioned earlier on, collaboration and the rest. So in all of these benefits and opportunities, what can you do? How can you be functional and very, very relevant? Ladies and gentlemen, you can do BIM consultancy. The same way you have quantity surveying consultancy firms, or engineering firms, or architectural consultancy firms, you can have a BIM consultancy firm, where basically what you do is BIM consulting. And one thing that you should note also is this, ladies and gentlemen, with the advent of BIM, we have a whole lot of new BIM actor roles that are coming up. And what are these? These are new roles that are different from the traditional roles that we know. Before now, you have it just queued to, I am an architect, I am an engineer, what of engineer, maybe civil, structural, mechanical, electrical, it is a mechanical surveyor. But now we have many roles that are coming up because of BIM. So it means there are diverse opportunities, BIM modelers, BIM coordinators, among others. So these are areas you can skill yourself for to be very relevant in the present time. Also, just like I do, you can actually also be a BIM trainer, where you train people, you train firms on how to use BIM, on how to improve their processes in terms of BIM adoption, okay, on how to do continuous improvement of processes, on how to do change management at the organizational and project levels. So you can also come into that space, and we play along this, or in the space rather, together. You can also be a BIM trainer. Many people are doing BIM outsourcing. You can be a relevant player that BIM responsibilities are being given to. So quickly, as we call it a day, ladies and gentlemen, looking at the demography for our talk this evening, you are very, very important to the future of not just BIM adoption, but the construction industry. And as a young professional, which has been shown over time that the young people are actually very, very averse, or very, very, they learn quickly rather, okay? They're very, very, very receptive of new technologies, and you learn it faster compared to the adults or the old workforce. It means that you are central to the future workforce of the construction industry. And looking at all of what has been said, it means you must take time to reskill yourself, to unlearn and relearn for relevance. And BIM is a critical technology for the construction industry and its future as we stand. So it is better that you start reskilling and upskilling yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, I know I've been showing you a whole lot of QR codes for publications that can help you in some of the things that I've said in this workshop this evening. This is another one. You can scan the QR code. Lastly, before I drop the mic this evening, ladies and gentlemen. You can scan this to do a personal assessment of yourself in the light of what you have listened to and what you know about BIM. And with this, you can easily tell yourself if you are there yet or not, and easily assess yourself. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your rapt attention. I think we can now take questions. Miss Anko, are you there?
Good evening, all. This is Bartholomew. First of all, I'd like us to appreciate our guest speaker, Dr. Dekunle. This has been a very, very wonderful and expository webinar. And take it or not, I have picked one or two things from this. I believe every other person here has gotten one or two new insights on BIM. Dr. Dekule, we really like to appreciate you for coming to expose some secrets about BIM to us as young construction professionals. At this point, just like my co-host Kuzani said earlier, we'll go into the Q&A session. So please, if we have questions, we could drop them in the chat box, or you could indicate by raising your hand, and when you're given permission, you unmute your mic and ask a question. So it's Q&A time now, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, but I hope I did well with the time, though.
Oh, yes, you did fantastic. You did fantastic. You conserved time very much. I think we really need to equally appreciate you for that, Doctor. You conserved our resources properly. Thank you very much. So to the audience, please, do we have any questions? Can either drop them in the chat box or you indicate. While we are waiting for questions, we have another edition. You see how wonderful this was. We have another edition coming up in July next month, and our guest speaker will be coming all the way from the UK. So we really like those of you here to keep a date with us and spread the word. Because when you benefit something good, you also take it out there. So please, any questions?
There is a hand from Organero.
Okay. Organero, you could unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Very well.
Good day, everyone, again. Thanks a lot, Dr. Adekunle. That was a very nice presentation. I'm a BIM enthusiast myself, and I'm an architect and a BIM enthusiast myself in the UK. And just a quick one. Most of the concept, wonderful, lovely concept, a very good breakdown from him. But just what I wanted to ask him was, I'd never heard about the city information modeling. Is that similar to a digital twin, or what's the difference between a digital twin and the city information modeling? I know that eventually the digital twin is supposed to get to a level where a large area can be modeled digitally and things can be observed from there. So what's the difference between that and adoption of the BIM levels in places like Nigeria, where we come from, or just general countries that do not have the amount of infrastructure to implement those things? What do you think is the first step to go about? Because I feel that technology is the basic hindrance. A lot of people, they already have this knowledge, and the training can easily be gotten. So my second question, I guess, is what does he think will be the best way going forward to implement these processes in places like where we come from? Yeah. So thanks again for the presentation, though. Cheers, everyone.
Doctor, over to you.
All right. Thank you very much, Architect Ogene Rowe for your question. Let me start from the second one. What can be done? What should be the first step? Looking at it from, let me say, the developing countries context, if I put it that way, because I don't want to single out Nigeria or South Africa, Kenya, or whichever country it is. Now, first thing is, like I said earlier on, we need contextual solutions. By that, I mean that, of course, we might say the UK has done it, this has done it, but most times importing those solutions don't work in our context. That is number one, contextual solutions to actually fit into our context. Secondly, in terms of the challenges or some of the barriers that we have seen, it will be the resistance to change by most of our stakeholders. So most of our stakeholders don't want to adopt new ways of doing things. So the question is always, or the position rather is always, we have been doing this thing like this for years. Why should we change? On the other part of it is the lack of the will from the stakeholders. Take, for example, if you tell someone, if I integrate BIM with blockchain, then this will be transparent in terms of the payments. When you do this, it automatically does this. Someone will definitely tell you, then you are going to cut my profits, which in essence is not really his profit, but actually he's saying you are going to cut out what I benefit from this system, either legally or illegally. You are going to cut it out. So you find out that in our context, resistance to change, lack of contextual solutions, right? Then the lack of the skills, which I hammered on earlier on, is also something that is critically affecting us. Maybe lastly, that will be the fourth solution that I feel might be there, is the use of mandates. So if we have policy side of things that drive the adoption of technology, we will be there. But if the ecosystem is still there, the value chain is still there without policy guiding it or mandates from the government, etc., we will not be able to achieve the adoption of BIM in the developing country context. Now, let's look at your first question, and I hope that answers your question. Then let's look at your first question, the CIM and your digital twin. Of course, both are very similar. However, if you look at the CIM, which is City Information Modeling, you are looking at an urban scale information model. Whereas your digital twin can easily be used for individual devices, etc. So you can even use it for standalone houses, hospitals, some processes rather, even in hospitals. You can use your DT there and the rest. But when you talk about city information modeling, you are talking about an information model that is being carried out at the urban level of things. So you are talking about spatial design, spatial monitoring and management, among others. So you are talking about large-scale infrastructure management. So you can say, yes, they are similar, but the difference lies in the size of what each one is being used for, and then the detailing that comes with both of them. I hope that answers your question, architect. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. Maganera, I believe that will suffice. Doctor, we have a question from on the chat box. It says, okay, as an aspiring construction manager expert, on what platform can I learn in detail about the use of BIM?
As an aspiring construction manager,
yes,
platforms to learn. Okay, now yes, let me say it this way. One, I would be careful so that it won't be as if I am promoting any platform. I hope,
Okay.
yeah, I hope that is fine. But generally, we have so many online learning platforms where you can actually learn about BIM. And aside from that, I think these days, you have a whole lot of videos and the rest, even on platforms like YouTube. So if you want to learn informally, let me put it that way. If your intent is to have the knowledge and the rest informally, you have so many videos on YouTube, but you have so many MMOCs and virtual learning platforms, which I want to name their names, right? Where you can learn about BIM, and different things are actually designed for BIM learning on those platforms. Aside from that, you have some institutions, although you don't have them spread all over, you have some institutions where BIM is being taught. And for some of these institutions, you have them even having BIM for quantity surveyors, BIM for builders, BIM for construction managers, etc. So you have them actually being designed for specific purposes in these institutions. So I would just advise the professional, the young professional, to actually look at it, at those three options that I've given, go online, check it, and then choose the one that is best suited. Because remember, by best suited, it means you might actually have those that will have cost implications. So choose the one that is best suited for your learning process, your learning grade, and your pocket at that point in time. Thank you very much.
Pocket is very important. Okay, I think we have hands raised. Kudzani, you could unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, Doctor, for this very insightful presentation, very informative. I actually learned a lot from your presentation. I do have two questions. My first question is, how do we go about knowing which are the BIM programs or softwares that are compliant? As you mentioned that there are thousands of BIM softwares out there, but I think what I'm more concerned about is uniformity. For example, I am a quantity surveyor, and in our field, like in South Africa, we normally use WinQS when we do bills of quantities, which is the standard for any other company. Like if you go to another company, you'd be expected to know WinQS, or if you then go to become a contractor's QS, you need to know how to use CCS Candy software or Build Smart. But are they, let's say, the top most utilized softwares for construction projects? Maybe the software may differ if it's now engineering projects, but if it's just construction projects, then these are the common ones, so that there is conformity. And you also mentioned that there are architects that are in the forefront, but they may say that this is a BIM software, but it may not actually be a BIM software, as you mentioned. If it's yeah, so maybe that's my first question. My other question is that how do we go about how do we go about dealing with the issue of resistance by a team when you join a team? For example, in my case, I am a QS working in facilities management, and we use a software called it's a computer aided facility management software called Accubus, but there is resistance from my team. Like the engineers, they don't upload drawings or work in that software. They prefer using a different software, and then they'll send an email or they'll give instructions on email. So it's very email based. And it seems like we don't fully utilize the software. And most of the complaints is that it's very administrative. And you also did mention that BIM, it's very, you actually upload it at real time, that you're constantly uploading it for it to be effective. And I think the reason why people
become less resistant with, for example, the Acubus software that we're supposed to use. Our client, it's actually a government. Our client is Public Works. They actually requested that we utilize it, but the problem is the contractor is resistant on updating it on time, so it becomes less reliable. For example, when I have to do monthly payment certificates, I cannot rely on going onto the BIM software. I now have to use other avenues to extract information for me to do the payment certificate, even though I have to go to site to verify. But it would have been helpful if all that information is also on that software when it's updated in real time, and also not going around. It actually takes more time when you have to go through emails and all that stuff. So it's resistance and also BIM compliant. Those are my two questions. Thank you, Doctor.
Oof. Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Kuzani, for your question. Let me see if I can recall everything and then answer. Now, let me start from the last one. How do you bring others to the party? I believe that is the question. How do you make them actually align to all of this? One thing about it, about all of these adoption drives, technology here and there, the human component is not something you can take out of it. Remember what I said earlier on. Yes, you have the technology, but you still have the people being very, very critical to it. And one problem that has been also observed is, which is there, is, yes, you might say we can share data in real time, etc. The accuracy of data is something we are not looking at. What if I know Ms. Kasande is going to actually do my payment certificate, but while I'm filling something on Acubus, either intentionally or I wasn't even paying attention, I was distracted. Instead of writing 7, I wrote 9. And then she went ahead to prepare whatever she's going to prepare, certificates with a wrong information. So we still have that garbage in, garbage out aspect of it, right? Now, how do we bring them to the party? Which is tied to what I think Akiteogene asked earlier, the resistant part of it. Ladies and gentlemen, from where I am, I would say, let's assume your client from the beginning of the project mandated the use of a particular software. And in the contract conditions, there are laws or clauses, rather, to stipulate what is meant to be done and what is not, and the penalties. I want to believe every contract party are going to sit tight. The same way, like I said earlier on, the mandates. The same way all of us know we can actually have different forms of contract being adopted on projects, and that becomes what everyone follows. If we have mandates or policies that talks about how BIM must be adopted, etc., at industry level, project level, even organizational level, I believe everybody is going to sit tight. So for your own case, I want to believe if the client actually says, this is what I want, and everyone must sit according or must do it in this particular manner, then that will have been done. However, that is more or less, you are not alone in that kind of scenario, I must say. Most of the time, you have it that professionals actually go to the field. You find, let's say, Mr. Bat, Ms. Kuzane using softwares, but we are having others on that same project team who are not using softwares. So now you have a problem of Should I continue using my software, or I should just join them to make my life easier? So it is always like that where we have uneven adoption of BIM. So see it that way. So to answer your second question, I may not have a straightforward answer to it, but I believe if your client really says this is what I want on my project, defines it from the beginning for each party, I believe that would have been taken care of. Because every party to that project will fall in line. Then to the second one, for conformity, dear Ms. Kuzane, it is not, shall I say, possible for you to start defining just one software for everyone, which is something that is actually being experienced partly in South Africa at the moment, where you have a particular software vendor or manufacturer rather being the major player in the construction industry at the moment. So if you turn to the left or to the right, it is only that manufacturer that you are going to hear its name everywhere you turn to. I think similarly in Nigeria, it's the same case where you have this particular manufacturer being the major player. But for the ecosystem of BIM software, you can't say one software manufacturer should be the major player. The only thing is that interoperability of these softwares. Remember, different softwares have different capabilities. That is one. Two, they cost differently. And every company or project does not have the same financial strength. So you cannot tell everyone to actually purchase or adopt a particular software. The only thing is the interoperability of these softwares, irrespective of which make it is or where they are sourced from. I hope that answers your question. The standard is the most important thing to say, this is how it must do ABC, and this must be the outcome. So if you have a standard stipulating what must be done in terms of the process and what the outcome must be, the most important thing is your software aligning to that outcome that has been outlined. Thank you.
No, thank you, Doctor. Yeah, you answered my questions. Thank you so much.
Okay, that's a good one. Thank you, Doctor. Before we go further, I would like to redirect everyone's attention to the chat box. Dr. Adekunle has dropped a link for personal assessment. So please, I would like everyone to participate in that assessment before we approve here. Thank you very much. Architect General, I don't know if you still have further questions. Your hand is still raised. And if there are any other further questions, like I said earlier, while we go for the assessments, our next edition will be coming up in July. And like I said, we'll be having a guest speaker from the UK. So, at this point, I'd like to ask if you still have any further questions.
Thanks. Nothing from me for now. Thank you. Thank you, Doctor.
Okay, so with that, with the permission of the host, Dr. Adekunle, I would like to express sincere and warm gratitude to you for this enlightening lecture on BIM for young professionals, and would like to really appreciate the things you've exposed, the new concepts, that damage information model, city information model, and things like that. And we're really looking forward to future contact with you. We really appreciate you, sir. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much for having me.
So at this junction, we would like to, every good thing that has a beginning must always have an end. We would like to, at this junction, appreciate everyone who has made our time to join us for this program. And we thank you for your time, and we look forward to seeing you next month at the next presentation. Thank you very much, and have a good evening. Guzani?
Thank you so much. Thank you, Doctor.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Good night.